And welcome. Now before I can finish assembling the heads for my Moto Guzzi Le Mans 1000, I've got one other little issue that I need to solve, and that is two stripped threads. Now two of the threads that hold the rocker cover on this head are stripped, and there's one on the other head. There's various reasons why these threads strip out. Often it's just because owners of these motorcycles have a tendency to over tighten these screws when they're servicing the bike and adjusting the valve clearances. But another reason that they are often stripped is that people fit these head guards, and this is a period style head guard, and they don't replace the bolts with a longer bolt, which means that there is much less engagement of the thread in the head, and it's a lot easier for a ham-fisted mechanic to actually strip that thread. So if you do put head guards on your bike, it's certainly advisable to replace the screws that go through the head guard mounting points with slightly longer screws. Now to repair this thread, we're going to use a Heli-Coil style threaded insert. I'm using a power coil, and it's a 6mm thread in here. So what we have to do is, the kit comes with everything that you need. I'll just open it up. So it comes with a drill which drills out the existing thread to the correct size for the tap. You then run the tap through, and then there's a number of these they look like high tensile stainless steel inserts that you screw in using a tool here, and then there's a little tang on each one that you need to snap off with the other special tool. But we'll go through that process as I do it. Now you can do this freehand with a cordless drill and a hand tap, but because I've actually got a drill press, I'm going to use the drill press because it makes it a lot easier to keep the drill and the tap vertical, which means that you get a perfect job every time. Obviously, if it's on the bike, you have to use the hand method, but you know, I've got the luxury of being able to use a drill press because the heads are currently off the bike. So that just gives me a little bit of an advantage to get the job done properly. You know, doing it by hand is fine, and if you've done a lot of them, certainly it's not that hard to actually keep everything aligned, but we'll just use a drill press today. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the first part of the job is to drill out these two holes ready for tapping. I'm going to be using this Moly-Slip lubricant. I find this is a really fantastic lubricant for drilling and also for machining. There's various types of lubricants and spray cans out there. Obviously, if you're doing a lot of machining, you'd probably use a proper cutting oil. But for these sort of little jobs, a can of this hanging around is really fantastic. Okay. Okay, that's the two holes done. The other thing you really do need to be careful of is how far you drill. You certainly don't want to, the threaded area is only really within these two fins on the head, and that goes for all the way around. So that's about 15mm down that I've drilled on both sides. Now the next stage of the job is to tap these two holes. Now I've got a spring-loaded centre in here to hold the end of the tap, and I'll use that to make sure that the tap is vertical over the hole. So first of all, I will just drop the centre down to centre it on that hole. And just that seems it's pretty good. So what we do is we just put our tap in, run this down, apply some pressure, lock that off, put some cutting compound in there, And now we can get a nice true vertical hole, thread I should say. And there we have our 2 threads done. Now the next step in the process is to actually insert the heli-coil itself. Now you'll notice there's a little tang on the bottom of this. This is what's used to screw the coil into the thread that we've just cut, and that needs to sit about halfway down on this tool. So we undo the Allen key and make sure that the insert is sitting about halfway down the actual split tang. And now we're ready to go. And now just using light downward pressure, we just screw the heli-coil into the thread that we've cut. We want the top of the heli-coil to be about a quarter turn down from the top. So we'll just check it as we go. It's just at the top now. Just a bit more. Maybe just a fraction more. And that's about right. And that's pretty much perfect. The only thing we have to do now is to break the tang off the bottom using the other tool. Now, one thing I should caution you against is that once you start screwing these inserts in, you can't back them out. Really, it's a one-way trip. So if you've done something wrong, it's really too late to change your mind now. Now we'll just tap that, and that's done. Now we just need to do the other side. Again, just a slight downward pressure, doesn't need to be much, it'll screw itself into that thread. Well, that's it, job done. You know, when it comes down to it, heli-coiling is not a particularly difficult job. You know, I haven't done a huge number myself, and hopefully with a bit of editing, I've made it look reasonably professional. And certainly it's not beyond the realm of any backyard mechanic who feels confident enough to give it a go. Just take it slowly and carefully and you'll get a good result. If you have any doubts, take it to a professional. So that's it for this particular video, which sort of sits out on its own. It's sort of part of the series on the valve guides for my Moto Guzzi Le Mans 1000, but I thought I'd put it out as a separate video since heli-coiling is a good topic on its own, and there probably will be a bit of interest in it. But in the next part of my valve guide series, we'll be reassembling the heads and getting everything ready for the final assembly back on the bike to get it back on the road. I'll see you then.